What in the 20s is going
In the
on?
20s,
Think about
yeah.
the 20s.
What
baby.
Plenty.
What in the 20s is
I
going
am
on?
here for my 20s, baby.
This is the 20s.
Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Zamam Kize, and this is What's in the 20s, a podcast where you listen to me grow through it, baby. On today's episode, we're going to be speaking about tearing you down. So, how this came about was I was in a situation, in a conflict situation, and it was with someone I care about, and it was getting very when it's like you're both just disagreeing and it's like you're butting heads and it's like something isn't clicking type of a situation, and it's things can't progress until we sort the situation. It's not like something where it's like, okay, let's just leave it and push behind. It's like, no, you're being challenged and you're being confronted with the situation. And oh my word, I realized that there's this guard that I had up. And the reason it wouldn't come down was because in order to tear that guard down, it meant having to tear me down. And let's speak about why we have guards, right? Why we have all these boundaries, these walls that we build up. I think very often it comes from situations in our past where something happened to us and we felt like we never want to feel that again. We never want to be taken advantage of. We never want to experience being let down. We don't want to experience just something so unpleasant that we already know and all of that kind of stuff. So we learn to build that boundary with people where this and this and this and this can happen. But once we get to this stage, like absolutely not. You begin to become like strict in a situation. You know what I'm saying? You're such a you're kind of like there's just things you just can't cross here. You just can't say this to me. You can't do this to me. You can't, like, there's certain triggers that will happen where if this is being, shown or done or said or whatever it is, that guard immediately comes up. That wall builds up and it's so quick. And I think, there's a part of us that has to give grace, right? Grace for the things that happened to us that weren't our fault. Forgiveness for ourselves that we allowed certain things to happen to us in the past. We allowed for certain things to progress when it shouldn't have. We allowed for certain people to occupy our time, our space, our environment, all the rest when they shouldn't have. There's certain stuff where we might reflect on and think like, why did I do that? Why did I let that happen and stuff again? And we have to be able to afford ourselves that kind of grace, that kind of forgiveness to say, it happened. I'm sorry it happened, but you're not in that place anymore, But it's so hard because it's like now we know better, right? Now it's like because this and this equaled that, I'm not going to do this and that anymore. We're going to do things differently. Under my regime, kind of a situation, I'm not going to allow anything to ever get to that point ever again because when you kind of even have foresight, you feel like if you keep going down this path, you already know where it's going. So then you become so strict, you tell someone like, don't even think about it. Don't even try it. We're not doing this. We're not, we become so, when I say guarded, it's like in a way that sometimes it's even unnecessarily so, because we become so overprotective of our inner child. We become so overprotective of our feelings, and so sensitive towards certain things that it feels like someone kind of addressing something with you it's so conflicting and antagonizing and patronizing, and it's all of these words where you're just like, what are you doing? And I think that we have to speak about like, the reason it even began was because at some point we felt like our safety was compromised. We felt like giving people that leeway in, where our walls weren't so high and all the rest, it was making us it was making us give people the opportunity to take advantage of us, and there was this moment when we felt like unstable, in our lives. And because we don't want to experience that and stuff, maybe there was something that our parents did, that made us feel so like unsettled that now when you navigate certain things in your adulthood, you're just like, I'm not doing things like that or whatever, because I know how it felt when I was younger and this happened to me, right? And that's what I mean about your safety being compromised, in a sense of that security you had, that this person you can trust, who can always be there or whatever it is, now all of a sudden lets you down, disappoints you, doesn't show up, all of that kind of stuff, is inconsistent, etc., etc. And it's like that foundation you thought you have, where you were built on something so sturdy, starts to become fickle, starts to feel fragile, starts to feel like you can wobble and all of that. And it's such an unsettling feeling to not feel like you can put both feet on the ground, to not feel like grounded, essentially, in a decision that you make, in a partner that you have, a friendship you're in, a discourse with family, business ventures you may, partake in, contracts that you may sign. It's so anxiety inducing, actually, to think about it, because that kind of feeling of I'm not sure, uncertainty, all the rest, it takes us back to the time that where that security was compromised with us, you know where the people we trusted to constantly make us feel safe, make us feel secure, make us feel assured, affirmed, and all of that, when they didn't, now it's like a knock at your self-esteem, it's a knock at your confidence and all of that kind of stuff. So you learn to build a guard, right? You learn to basically protect yourself and defend yourself against any potential, kind of threats. It's not even that there was a threat, it's the potential of that even happening. It's like we turn things away and shut things down before it can even happen, before the opportunities even presented for that to happen, before we can create space for it to happen, an environment for it to happen. It's like, let's even forget, what that could look like, because you're not going to allow it, so we hold ourselves back, like fear type of situation, fear to trust someone, fear to fall in love, fear to take risks, fear to embark on new journeys, fears to regarding kind of starting again, fears of letting go of this job and pursuing something else because of, that lack of stability in that, it feels stable to stick with what you know. It feels stable to stick with familiarity. It feels stable to stay here, be with this person, be with this job, be with this kind of financial security and all the rest. It feels reckless, and there's something in us that becomes unsettled. Your inner child is feeling like, what's happening? Are we doing this again? This is not happening. This is not happening again. And I think when you are met with that confrontation as an adult, it is so uncomfortable. Back to the conflict I was speaking about that I was sitting with, the confrontation that I had. It was so frustrating, uncomfortable. I did not understand what was going on. I didn't understand why this was happening. And this is happening like in person, like you don't have time to just like take, 10 days and go think about it or whatever it is. We're dealing with this conversation now. We're seeing things differently. And I'm not understanding why you can't see it the way I'm seeing it. I'm not understanding why you can't accept it the way I'm telling you it is. And that is a toxic trait, to constantly expect people to just take your side because you think you're right, because you think you're always making sense. You think you're always on the right side of things, essentially, And I think that was my frustration, was, how can you not see that I'm making sense? How can you not see that I'm not the wrong one here? That and that was like what was building so much frustration, because I think I started to feel like I'm not being heard. I started to feel like I'm not being seen. And that's what I'm saying. It started to trigger a whole lot of other feelings that weren't even present in the confrontation. And that's when I became defensive. That's when I became, it's just so, because that's the thing. Like I have this trigger, right? Where I hate not feeling heard. I hate feeling invisible. I think everybody does. Feeling like what you're saying isn't being taken into consideration, feeling like there's no value, no worth in what you're offering into the space or something like that. I hate feeling like I'm being disregarded. Like, oh my goodness. And as anyone would. But my response to that feeling, I feel like, when you can feel the wheels turning inside your head. You're not even here. Like you can physically kind of see the light switch going from green to red type of a situation where you start to get so like, why aren't you? And that's what I'm talking about. The God comes up, right? Because you think about that time as a child where maybe you felt ignored. You think about that time as a child, maybe when you felt like you were just meant to be seen, and not heard. You know, when they say that children are meant to be seen but not heard type of a situation, you think about that time as a child where you just weren't, I don't know, it didn't matter what you wanted type of situation. Things were decided for you. And when you feel like there's that loss of control, that's something I also struggle with, feeling like I'm sitting with the loss of control. And that's why that confrontation was so dark for me, was because you're asking me to surrender. Surrender that control to see where you're coming from. You're asking me to break down this thing that I've done so well building up, to give myself confidence, to secure my ego, to take, what I'm saying? You're asking me to break all of that down, break parts of me down, tear parts of me down, so that I can reason with you, so that I can walk a mile in your shoes, so that I can see where you're coming from. And it's like sometimes you get so focused on wanting to be right that you're not willing to hear someone's point of view, that you're not willing to consider somebody else. You're not willing to, what I'm saying? You just want to make sure that your point is being put across, that you are heard, that you are the winner, like kind of a situation. You are not wrong. And I think that was like what I was realizing, was that I struggle being wrong, because being wrong makes me feel like I'm a failure. I failed at something. And I had to confront that situation. Why do you feel like this, Zama? Why do you feel like there's a problem with you if you're wrong? You know what I'm saying? If you make a mistake, if you let somebody down, and I could not stomach guys, I could not stomach that confrontation, because it needed me to look within and to start listening. I was so focused on speaking. I was so focused on making sure that you will hear me. You will, what I'm saying? Like sometimes when you get upset, when you feel hurt, when you feel let down and stuff like that, you feel like, now I need to show this person type of situation. And that's a toxic trait. It's a toxic habit to feel like you need to go tit for tat or something, like you need to outdo someone, that you need to make sure that they never feel like they can do that again and all of that kind of stuff. I think there's a way of putting in a boundary that doesn't mean having to humiliate someone. That doesn't mean having to bring somebody else down. That doesn't mean having to make someone feel less than. That doesn't mean having to make someone feel insignificant, because what you then end up having is a superiority complex. And I had to interrogate myself about that. Why is it so important for me? And I think it's because I hate the feeling of someone making me feel like I'm less than, someone making me feel like I don't belong, someone making me feel like I have nothing to contribute, or I cannot stand it. And so I always do my best to make sure I know a lot and all of that kind of stuff. And it's becoming accepting the truth that you don't know everything. You don't have all the answers. You won't have all the solutions. Like, you know what I'm saying? And that was what I mean when I'm like, it's uncomfortable, it's frustrating, it's unsettling. But you have to do that, because how are you ever going to address why you're this way? How are you ever going to address the problems that are making you these certain kind of traits? And that's what I mean. You now need to surrender your ego. You have to surrender your pride. You have to surrender this this God that you've built up, right? This wall that you've built up. And breaking that down, as I said earlier, means breaking parts of you down, because it's like you now need to break down that version of you that taught you to build that wall up. I'm making sense. You now need to confront her, him, them, speak to them directly and let them know that this is not that situation where your safety was compromised, where your self esteem was compromised, where your self respect was compromised. This is not that. And that it's safe here, and that you can trust yourself. I think that's another thing, is that it shows a lack of trust in your own self when you constantly feel the need to be defensive. I feel like it also shows a lack in being able to to substantiate your points, if you're constantly feeling like you need to scream over somebody else, shout over someone else, this and that, whatever it is, it's like you don't have enough evidence on your own, enough information on your own to prove a valid point. And so you think you need to now resort to other methods, like I said, as like intimidation and all of that kind of stuff to feel better than, to feel superior, to feel, all of that kind of stuff. But it doesn't work like that. Even tactics like becoming so sensitive, you just start crying, because it's like, that if you look weaker and stuff, maybe then you'll get that sympathy, playing the victim card, all of that. There's things that we do to cushion our ego, but you can't do that. And that was also what was so interesting about this specific conflict is I was so overwhelmed with all these emotions I was feeling that I just started crying, because I'm just like, I'm so conflicted, and this person who cares about me so much, loves me, all of that, was like to me, you can cry, but it's not gonna change. It's not gonna change what I'm saying to you, and that's what I mean. You gotta address yourself now. And that was the first time someone's ever said that to me. Because I think as children, you get so used to that if you cry, you get sympathy. If you cry, the situation, the tone, all of that kind of stuff is gonna change to suit you, right? To better it's gonna be convenient for you now because now everybody's gonna be like, oh, like shame and all of that kind of stuff. They wanna cuddle you, they wanna make you feel safer and all the rest. And this person who who knows me sometimes, I think even better than I know myself, was just like, when you're done crying, let's get back to the matter at hand. And I thank them so much for challenging me in that way because I think that's when I cry, I absolve myself of taking responsibility. I absolve myself of taking accountability, and we can do that all the time. It's like, you know what? If I just want to skip this part, let me just let the waterworks come. You know what I mean? I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to, like you just get there, like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to, and you start crying and stuff like that. And it's just like, okay, fine, just put it back. No, sometimes you need someone who genuinely cares about you, someone who wants the best for you, someone who wants you to grow, to actually say to you, wrap those tears up, dry it up. I'll give you tissue if you need. But we got a situation at hand. There's a problem with you. There's an attitude coming out of you. There's something you're doing habitually that is stunting your growth, that is stunting you from being the person you want to be, and being confronted with that conversation. When I tell you that breakthrough was the most intense and insane thing I've ever felt. Hearing someone say to me, we're still going to talk about this. Like, we're not putting it off for later. We're not this, you know what I'm saying? Like, dry those tears, let's, you know what I'm saying? Was a moment of reflection for me where I realized, okay, I need to now break this part of myself down. I need to tell that version of me that was trying so hard to protect me. I need to tell her she can sit down now. Like she can come down. It's okay because there's a bigger issue at hand and I will never get to it. I'll never reach it if I keep making excuses for why I can't address that version of me. If I keep making excuses of why, we can't work on that thing inside of us. And there are traits inside of you that you need to change. You need to improve on. There are habits that you've picked up that are terrible habits that you need to let go of. And it's like you don't do it because you become so used to maintaining them. You become so used to letting it take so much time and effort and all of that, in your life that it feels like a part of you is gonna die with it, And I get that. I get that a lot. But I've started to learn that what you must do is reach for something else in its place, right? So if you're so used to, when you feel conflicted and you feel confronted and all of that, you're so used to now retaliating and all of that, reach for something else in its place, like kindness. Reach for something else in its place, like empathy, compassion. Reach for something else in its place, like patience. I struggle with patience. I feel like sometimes patience, why can't things get done now? And that's something I needed to start reaching for in moments of adversity, in moments where I felt so like I'm stuck, like I'm frustrated, like, I had to teach myself instead of, going insane, look for virtues like patience, look for virtues like understanding, listen, learn to listen, learn to listen. Even if you might feel that you're right, listen to why someone might think they're right too, might have a different perspective on the situation, might offer insight into this whole context of what's going on. And that was something I needed to learn to do, is to like stop speaking so loud all the time. You can be so loud and so wrong. Oh, how you can be so loud and so wrong. And I needed to learn to listen more, to hear what's actually being said to me. Why does this person feel hurt by me? Even though I might have felt like, but you know, was that really wrong? To that person, it hurt them. To that person, it made them feel a certain way. And if I care about this person, if I care about this relationship, if I care about this job, if I care about this environment and the situation I'm in, would I not care and take into considerations how I make other people feel? How is it that I am making this person I care about feel? What is it about my actions that is making them hurt? And why am I responsible for that? Because the truth is, you are. And I think that when you learn to just tear those parts of you down, and I get it, it's so hard, you know tearing that protective layer around you that you've worked so hard to build, learning how to bring it down, learning how to calm them down, like calm that version of you down, learning how to set that version of you free. There's so much more that you can I don't know, accomplish. Like, even a part of reaching for something else in its place is learning how to trust. The reason you don't trust is because people have let you down. You've been disappointed, you've been hurt, your boundaries have been crossed, all of that kind of stuff. And so you struggle now to trust. And I had to now think in terms of evolving. I can now evolve into someone who trusts my friends, who trusts the person I'm seeing, who trusts my family, who trusts my business partner, you know what I'm saying? It's like I can learn how to build trust with someone instead of constantly thinking the worst of them, constantly expecting them to put me in a situation I don't want to be in. Think of something positive. You know what I'm saying? You need to evolve as a human being. You need to start thinking, how can I develop? Instead of holding and being so attached to that trait of yours that keeps your ego, safe. Think more of your spirit. Think, we're spiritual beings. How can we serve? And I think, yeah, this was such an interesting conversation that when I tell you that breakthrough kind of taught me so much about myself, taught me so much about what I need to change, taught me about how I could grow and stuff. Like, I feel like so much more of a better person. It was frustrating in the moment. I did not like this person in the moment. And I now realize, like, no, it was all done with love. It was all done with so much care. And like I said, it'll only take someone who really loves you, to be able to not just give, like, let you say what you just want to hear, but actually tell you what you need to hear. And yeah, I think get ready for that. Prepare yourself for that. Prepare yourself for the moment, like the period of tearing, stripping parts of you down, stripping parts of your childhood or whatever, your past experiences down, and allowing them to go, like releasing them, letting them free from who you are now and who you could be in the future. And yeah, that's really what I wanted to say today. As always, I'm sending my love. Goodbye.
What in the 20s is going
In the
on?
20s
Think about
here.
the 20s.
The 20s,
What
baby.
in the 20s?
Plenty.
What in the 20s is
I
going
am
here for
here
my
for my
20s, baby? This is the 20s.
Shimmy, 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 shimmy.